Please try to understand. If you are teaching at a certificate level or a diploma level or UG level or PG level, in such a case, I think you have to modulate your teaching, and your expression, your references must be changed so that the target group easily understands them and in tune with their necessity and need. Similarly, clarity on what to teach, because intellectual property is not something like a PPT, which is simply hosted and uploaded and people go on reading. We must know what to teach. What exactly are we teaching? Are we teaching the theory of intellectual property? Is it the practice? Is it the enforcement? Is it the management? Is it licensing or assignment? We must have clarity. And last point is very important. One has to adopt the best method of teaching intellectual property. One can ask me, what is the best method? In fact, there is no single best method. I may show an image of a chimpanzee taking selfie and explain that animals may not have copyright in themselves. Or I may show a photograph of a machine like, ASU machine, which was patented in Telangana for reducing the pain of weaving the clothes by using dye and tie technology, right? So what I'm trying to tell you is that there is no stereotyped method which caters to the needs of IP teachers. We have to change depending on the various factors. Then we'll go to the next, in fact, very important aspect, the attributes of good IP teachers. If you want to be a good teacher of intellectual property, you must, in fact, the realize the following four important issues. Next slide, please. First point, if you want to be a good teacher of intellectual property, don't think that, yes, I went to Franklin Pierce Institute, I went to Max Planck Institute, or I studied in Oxford or Harvard. That's not important here. What is important is that there must be a sound jurisprudential knowledge. After all, what is intellectual property? You must know what exactly is property. When we are thoroughly aware of property, then we understand the intangible property, incorporeal property, then we come to intellectual property. But what is property? What is its ownership and classification of property? The theories of property, this is very important. A teacher of intellectual property must understand at least 2 to 3 important jurisprudential theories of law. Natural law theory, which says that a creator must own something which is created by him. One who creates must own it. This is one natural law theory, which went to transformed into Lockean theory or even labor law theory, right? Economic incentive theory, public interest theory. These are some of the theories which you need to understand for a better teaching of intellectual property. This is first point. One must also understand the rights, because you see, we are talking about intellectual property rights. Are they absolute? For example, I may have only right to use. I may not have right to transfer. I may have only right to apply the trademark, but I may not have the right to, use in respect of my own goods. So what are perfect rights, imperfect rights, absolute rights, limited rights, right? All these things we must know. The obligations concept also we must know. So a sound jurisprudential knowledge is essential for teaching intellectual property. First attribute. Second point I've already mentioned. Understanding the interdisciplinary nature of intellectual property. Intellectual property, as I already said, is not the property of lawyers or law teachers or law students. It is concerned with many other disciplines, and there are different dimensions. There are economic dimensions. There are philosophical dimensions in the context of intellectual property. When you are talking about moral rights of authors, that is, the paternity right and integrity right, you are talking about the morality, the philosophy, right? Then we need to understand the relationship between the social sciences and intellectual property. What is the sociological impact of intellectual property? If a life-saving drug is patented, what is going to be the impact on the society? You have to make a sociological study. Similarly, in political science, when it comes to policy decisions, international relations, intellectual property assumes importance. For example, when TRIPS agreement was signed by India, many politicians criticized the then government, stating that where the parliament discussed, how the people came to know, or they were kept in dark about it. Political science aspects, economics, sociology, then similarly, even languages, arts, for example, culture, intellectual property in copyright, in the form of copyright, is concerned with the culture. So we must know something about culture, heritage, then science, engineering, and technology also. Science, it may be related to some of the intellectual property because many inventions are made in the field of science. Innovations are made in the field of science. Innovative methods are used in the case of management, business. Same is the case with technology, engineering. So what we need to understand is a little of everything. You need not be an expert. But when we use the term reverse engineering, we must know what is this reverse engineering. You need not be a graduate of engineering to understand this. So how to go back, how to put the bits and pieces together again to start from the beginning. So interdisciplinary nature of intellectual property also need to be understood. I already mentioned. Okay, forget about the other subjects. Even in the field of law also, a good teacher of IP must have a sound knowledge of law of property, jurisprudence I have already mentioned. The constitutional law also is equally important because, for example, you talk about acquisition of private property for a public purpose. Doctrine of eminent domain comes into picture. Then one may ask, can you acquire a private invention which is patented for public purpose? Then you must be in a position to say that yes, in fact, patents are part of the union list. Law is already made by the parliament on that. There is something called compulsory license under the Patents Act of 1970. Subject to certain conditions, compulsory license may be granted, patents may be acquired. So constitution also is equally important. Copyright, for example, somebody may speak about freedom of speech and expression on one hand, copyright protection on the other hand. Sometimes there may be some kind of conflict. So constitutional law, administrative law, because the decisions taken by administrative authorities in the field of IP, controller of patents, registrar of copyright, registrar of trademarks, or intellectual property appellate board, all these authorities and officials, they have to apply the administrative law. So we should know whether their decision is arbitrary in consonance with principles of natural justice. Then comes human rights also. People say that intellectual property violates human rights. This is one argument. Why? Because private persons prosper at the cost of others. One argument. I am not agreeing with this. Second argument may be that intellectual property itself is a human right. Right to own intellectual property, a right to be recognized as the owner of intellectual property itself may be human right. So today, for example, during COVID pandemic, right to health is considered as a human right. But if somebody patents a medicine for COVID-19 and it is priced at 1 lakh rupees per dose, people may say that this intellectual property is violating my human right to public. So please try to understand. We must understand the human right jurisprudence, international law, because ultimately this property needs to be protected at the international level in more than one nation. So what are the various theories, various concepts like the principle of national treatment, principle of non-discrimination, principle of reciprocity, convention minima, then whether this intellectual property needs to be legislated upon within the country or international convention itself is sufficient. I'm talking about the theories of relationship between municipal law and international law. Then law of torts, law of contracts, crimes, including procedural law. One must have a very good grip. Then you will be a better intellectual property teacher. Last point is we have to keep in mind certain relevant factors. We can't simply walk into any intellectual property class, whether virtual or in reality. Just like that, we need to keep in mind some relevant factors, which you will see in your next slide. Go to the next slide, please. In next slide, you need to, you will find that there are 4 areas which are very important to be understood by every teacher of intellectual property. Whether you specialize or not doesn't matter. Why do we need IP teaching? So why are we entering the class? Why are we teaching this subject? So there must be a purpose for that. That must be kept in mind. That's a relevant factor because that will temper down or temper up our presentation. Second one, who should be targeted? That is also equally important. You can't teach a school-going kid in the same way. You are teaching intellectual property for a law graduate or law postgraduate, or a police officer regarding copyright violation, or in the judicial academy you are delivering a lecture for the judges, or you are talking about the managers of intellectual property, or talking to the managers of intellectual property, the target group, that is important. What should be taught also is equally important. For example, if I talk only about the basics of intellectual property in a FDP like this, I'll be failing in my duty. Simple reason is that the presumption is that everyone who enrolled himself or herself knows the fundamentals of intellectual property law. Therefore, I need not touch upon the basics. I must, deal with the niche and other cutting edge level issues. Fourth point is what should be taught. What should be taught? That IP can be ignored. So what are you going to teach? The important areas and all. These are the relevant factors. Then we'll go to the 8th slide. And I already mentioned that when we are talking about the targeted groups, you will find nearly 5 different targeted groups can be identified in the next slide. And there, for example, there may be creators of assets, IP assets. Take, for instance, you're talking to the members of a copyright society. You're talking to the manufacturers of pharmaceutical products. You're talking to the students of National Institute of Fashion Technology, NIFT, right? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay, right. Or you are talking to a group of inventors like scientists. So what you are going to teach them should be something different. Like, you are talking to authors, designers, inventors. Then we have to modulate our presentation on what is required for them. If we are talking to or teaching or interacting with the protectors of IP assets, for example, practitioners, a lawyer wants to know something about the enforcement, the practice. The authorities want to know because they already know something about the statute, but they want to know much more. Or the judges, for example, I mentioned in the Judicial Academy, when this subject is taught, people directly ask us, sir, you please tell us the distinction between infringement of trademarks and passing of trademarks. So in the light of some case law developments and all. Or if you are targeting the teachers of IP assets. So the teachers, for example, academicians, when I'm talking to you, I must know what I'm going to talk. If I'm training the trainers in a TOT program, then I must know what should be, what extra information that is required to be passed on. Managers of IP assets, they require something else. For example, patent agent exam. If anyone has written patent agent exam, they say that the book written by Elizabeth Warkey is a wonderful book on law of patents, which is published by Eastern Book Company or some other company. That therefore you should know what exactly is to be prepared for patent agent exam. There are IP advisors, there are trademark agents, IP valuers also, IP vigilance professionals, and policy makers. For example, every MP, MLA, or whoever it is may not be an expert in law or any particular subject at all. When you want to apprise them about the basics, again, we should know. The legislators, ministers, and bureaucrats also must know. Civil society also needs to know because many people think that it cannot be patented. One example I'll give you, free software movement. People say that, in fact, the operating system need not be proprietary. Linux can be used. MS Office need not be used. It will serve the same purpose, right? And they're talking about free open source software. People are talking about no intellectual property at all. We want to use everything which is owned by, created by others. Civil society dimension is something different. What we need to understand is this: the needs of each class differ. The different needs in different countries also differ. Please try to understand this. TRIPS agreement has already classified the member countries into developed, developing, and least developed. When we are talking to somebody in United States of America or in England or any other developed country, their perspectives are different. When we are talking to a very poor country in sub-Saharan Africa, where you are talking about intellectual property to be effectively protected, those people will ask first, where is the food? So right to food, right to basic amenities, then intellectual property. They might also ask you, when we have not created intellectual property, how can we protect? In human rights concept, there is a theory called full belly thesis. Full belly thesis means what? For example, a person is having a sumptuous lunch or dinner, his human rights will be different. If a person is worried about his next square meal, his rights are different. Same is the case with IPRs. What I'm trying to tell you is that identify the specific needs of the specific groups of people or targets by keeping tomatoes and apples apart. Don't keep them together. This is equally important for us. Then when we are talking about the next slide, teaching of IP and the need for expertise, please try to understand. Because any good teacher will start with the past, will discuss much about the present, will also speak about some of the future projections. For example, copyright. We are teaching copyright. We can say that yes, in the Bible there is a saying in the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not steal. You will not steal. That is the basis of copyright protection. Right from the biblical days, right from the epics days of Mahabharata, etc. Yeah, you come across intellectual property. You can refer to evolution of intellectual property in the light of the Bible, Mahabharata, whatever, or any other religious text which might have referred to this. Then evolution of the modern patent law from 1474, from patenting of bad alone, seagoing monster, by one gentleman called Filippo Brunelleschi under the modern Venice law. Then you can talk about the Statute of Monopolies of UK, which is the precursors to the modern patent law. Then first patent law of US of 1790. You can go on and on. This is one aspect. Similarly, when you are talking about the human rights dimension of intellectual property, you may refer to Article 27 of Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948. And there, you please look at both the clauses. One clause says everyone has the right freely to participate in the cultural life of the community, to enjoy the arts, and to share in scientific advancement and its benefits. So, in fact, the result of all this is intellectual property only. Similarly, everyone has right to the protection of moral and material interests resulting from scientific, literary, artistic production of which he is the author. So author's rights can be traced there. Even ILO can be referred to, sir. ILO conventions also refer to the protection of indigenous knowledge, the traditional and indigenous knowledge. So there are a number of such provisions. Similarly, we must have a good understanding of the emergence of international legal regime of intellectual property, starting with the Paris Convention on the Protection of Industrial Property, 1883. Till now, I think we have nearly 40 international conventions. Some of them are general, some of them are specific, like Bern and Rome Convention, then WCT, WPPT, or some of the national laws like Digital Millennium Copyright Act of United States, likewise. So Not only this, we must be thoroughly aware of the position in India, how there has been a change. In the good old days, nobody really spoke about the intellectual property protection in India. We always followed what, Rabindranath Tagore said in Gitanjali, where the knowledge is free. We thought that knowledge is free. So intellectual property also is free. But the world has become a materialistic world. The world has come to realize that knowledge has become property. Now there is a change. So how the position has changed during the Britishers, after the Britishers left, before 94, and after we signed the TRIPS agreement, everything must be within our knowledge. Then another important aspect is about the other country practices. What's happening in other countries? That is equally important. Just now I mentioned digital copyright. So way back in 1988 or so, in fact, United States passed a law called the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, DMCA. Whereas in India, we integrated the digital copyright as part of the copyright law. So what's happening in other countries also throws light on many of the important issues, including the international conventions. This is, another important aspect of intellectual property teaching. Then the next slide is, I think I already mentioned about the, attributes of good IP teachers. We need not go back. Then go to the 11th slide, uh, teaching of IP. And here, what we need to understand is that have different aspects. Uh, for example, curriculum structure. If there are intensive courses, for example, with specialization on intellectual property, so there may be a special course on patents, trademarks, so on and so forth. Similarly, there may be courses which are devoted to different IP regimes. In an LLM specialization, we come across these, like law of trademarks, law of designs, patent law, copyright, so on and so forth. Then industry-specific courses are so many. Industry is not really worried about copyright law. They are more worried about computer law, the law relating to information technology. Then pharmaceuticals, the industries, they need something more about the patents. Or internet law, cyber law, these are some of the issues. Then there may be cross-sectional courses. The courses may be only on certain things like licensing of IPRs, because this is the practice of IPR. So licensing of IPR is equally important. So where we talk about voluntary licensing, then compulsory licensing, statutory licensing, then we talk about exclusive licensing, non-exclusive licensing and all, about the enforcement. Similarly, interdisciplinary courses dealing with economic aspects of IP, mostly the managers may prefer. So it depends on the target group for which the course has been designed. So we must prepare accordingly. Then coming to the next important point, when we are teaching intellectual property, there are different methods of teaching. Let me tell you something, dear participants. Whenever a lawyer or a practitioner or an official interacts with the teachers like us, and whenever we try to say something, most of the times I come across a statement. These are all academicians. They know only about the theory. They know only about the theory. So they don't know much about the practice and all, which is not true. In fact, today, every teacher is a practitioner also to some extent. Same is the case in the case of teaching of intellectual property. For example, classroom teaching is okay. Teaching in a webinar like this is okay. But we also deal with the problem solving approach. Problem method of teaching also is given. We may give a leading case. We may ask them to identify, for example, chancellor, masters, and of students or scholars of Oxford University versus Rameshwari photocopying works case, 2012. Just see, it can be a case study for the publishers, case study for recording association, case study for the teachers, scholars, and many others. And then we can discuss threadbare the theoretical, the practical issues as well. Then similarly, there is another approach called international or comparative law approach. This is equally important. So international and comparative law approach is something different. And when we deal with this international law and comparative law approach, we get a chance to compare and contrast, get a chance, to understand whether the international legal perspectives are incorporated in the national perspectives or not. Then tutorials may be complementary. Other than that, for example, we can ask a student to draft a patent specification, to draft a patent application, to draft a patent claim as part of the complete specification in application for patent. Or we can ask them to draft a licensing agreement. This is important. An assignment deed can be asked to be written. Similarly, negotiation with regard to licensing agreements. In ADR, for example, ADR and IPR can be clubbed together. Then pre-trial infringement litigation, that also can be looked at. For example, you can ask a student to step into the shoes of somebody who is opposing the grant of patent before the grant of patent. On what grounds? Section 25 of the Patents Act, etc. Similarly, we can also go for the mock trials, moot courts, whatnot. Recently, I have come across, in fact, an attempt to organize some kind of virtual moot court competition. Probably it has not seen the light of the day. Then not only this, with regard to the other aspects, like, when there are, the internship programs, I think the Controller of Patents, Registrar of Copyright, Intellectual Property Appellate Board, Competition Commission of India, many law firms, many, in fact, even World Intellectual Property Organization also offers number of courses with regard to, internship. And internship is something, is the best method of learning about the intellectual property rights. Similarly, teachers can also, supervise the various research papers. Recently, I had an occasion to work with a doctoral applicant in a US university, who joined me in writing a paper on intellectual property rights and artificial intelligence. It's published in one of the peer-reviewed journals of National Law University, Cochin. So that way, I think it will be a learning and unlearning process. And teaching takes place, learning also takes place. That may be kept in mind. Then, with regard to the continuing education, this is equally important, because what we learn today may be outdated by afternoon. A new development may take place. Teachers are supposed to be on their toes at all the times. So when you deal with the continuing education, one can continue to, continue the research work, maybe joint research projects. In fact, there are patent facilitation centers. There are certain SPRUHA chairs under CPUM program, a Ministry of HRD sponsored IP chairs in the universities, and there may be certain private sponsored, in fact, institutions or projects. We can be part of all that. We can go for publication of research. A case comment can be made, an article can be written, a monograph can be prepared, or proper research also can be conducted. Then similarly, national, international, and interdisciplinary exchange of views. For example, look at WIPO, World Intellectual Property Organization, which facilitates the participation by faculty, researchers, and students from various countries in number of programs. Sometimes fully sponsored training programs are, declared or announced by World Intellectual Property Organization. We have to keep our eyes open. Similarly, there can be some kind of national and international collaboration between the teachers of intellectual property, what they are doing in their country, in their university, so on and so forth. That's another important aspect, right? So similarly, there can be dedicated refresher courses, there can be orientation programs, there can be FDPs like this. And another important point, please try to understand. I don't know if you read Annual Survey of Indian Law published by Indian Law Institute. I think I'm happy to note that the learned director, in fact, Professor, who is the director of Indian Law Institute, is one of the resource persons He can tell you better because every year he publishes an excellent survey on Indian law, annual survey of Indian law. Look at the survey on intellectual property, which gives lot of inputs, lot of information, which regarding the incidents, developments that took place during a particular year. So that also can be looked at. These are the different resource, sources. Then another important aspect is with regard to important tips for the intellectual property teachers. So here we have about 10 tips which I try to give. For example, we must be strong in fundamentals of related subjects. I already made it out. Similarly, we have to keep ourselves abreast of the latest comparative and contemporary developments. What's happening in other countries? For example, if Picasso, a pig is painting, and somebody claimed copyright in its painting, who can claim? This happened in South Africa. If a chimpanzee took a selfie and David Slater, a nature life photographer, no, in fact, he, ultimately when he tried to, get the image, get the image published, he got the copy, royalty. PETA, in fact, the people for ethical treatment of animals, they challenged. So that is one development about the copyrightability of computer programs, patentability of computer programs. There are so many others. This is one important aspect. Similarly, aware of the policy, intellectual property, uh, policy of 2016. Similarly, we must be up to the international law. And we have to, in fact, develop related knowledge in the other fields, like the related knowledge can be in competition law, in consumer protection, in cyber law, or artificial intelligence, so on and so forth. All of them are related. Please, we must understand that. Then when we read good literature on intellectual property, we must read books like the Copyright by Coppinger, Patent Law by Nimmer, so on and so forth, and or Bentley and Sherman, or W.R. Cornish, so on. These are some of the classics which are respected, widely read throughout the world. Similarly, we must go through not only the theoretical part, we must also be in a position to understand how a specification is written for patent, how a license agreement is drafted, how an assignment deed is made, because we must have some practical exposure also. We can have, teachers groups. We can enroll ourselves for short-term or long-term courses of World Intellectual Property Organization and others. Then we can also keep in touch with some of the grassroots level developments. What I'm trying to say is that intellectual property is a fascinating subject. It touches upon almost every aspect of human life. Therefore, we must not confine ourselves only to the classroom. This is one important aspect. Then probably, I'm coming to the last slide, and then I will conclude. These are common to all. For example, when you start your lecture, give an outline,
Why do you always look at me like that?
points in several
Like
different
what?
ways, then
Like
use
not
short
normal.
sentences,
What is
then
normal?
we have to stress on important points, then we must give some time to the listeners to think and react. Then the lectures must be complemented by others, only not for the purpose of repetition alone. Then don't race through the last part of the lecture. I'm sure that I'm not racing through. Then there must be enough time for discussion. Then we have to prepare well. I explained just now how we have to prepare well. We can use pictures, we can use videos, we can use cartoons, and have some sense of humor also, which is equally important. One of the vice chancellors of a national university said, when he gave the same advice to one of his colleagues, against whom there was a complaint that he is always stone faced and he doesn't have any sense of humor, and the environment in the classroom is always very serious. Then the other teacher, it seems, he went to the class next day and he read 2 or 3 jokes, maybe he collected from somewhere. Then some people laughed, many did not laugh. Then he said, sir, I had good sense of humor today. That is not the sense of humor. I'm talking about the contextual humor, which can be, clubbed with the intellectual property rights discourse. This is one important aspect. Then I'm sure that the discussion which took place during the last 1 hour has been, interesting, and it has thrown some new light into number of areas. So with this, I'll stop. I wish all of you a very happy intellectual property law teaching. Then if you have any doubts, I think I will be available. Now over to the admin for the, the further action.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. This is Dr. Lipika, sir. It was such an enlightening session, and I have lot of comments for excellent session, excellent feedback in chat box also. Sir, I myself being a IPR teacher, it was really enlightening, and it will help me teach better in future. Thank you so much for your wonderful input, sir. Now I'll take a few questions at my end, sir.
Okay.
Sir, the first question is from Ankita Singh. She is asking, how can be cultural goods, tangible and intangible goods be protected from intermediate groups? Is there any attempt being made against cultural appropriation?
Cultural appropriation.
Yes, sir.
In fact, if I understood the question well, normally any property should be either tangible or intangible. And when we are talking about tangible, it's only movable and immovable. But sometimes we come across 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional, even virtual, or the other related aspects. But at the same time, just a minute. Just a minute. Please be on the line. I'll get back.
Please, sir. I'll request the participants, if you have any other questions, please put them in chat box. Yes, sir.
I think the question was about the cultural appropriation.
Right, sir.
I'll be, in fact, in a better position to answer this if the question is more specific with some illustration. You can ask Ms. Ankit Singh or Mr. Ankit Singh to explain this a little further so that I can clarify better.
Sure, sir. I'll request Ankita, if you can elaborate as requested by sir, I'll take up your question again. Please do that in chat box. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sir, another question is, sir, it is been asked by Vijay Kumar. He is saying that we are aware that intellectual property law is emerging subject in the legal education, but the students are unaware of this importance in their career. So how we can help guide them?
Honestly speaking, I don't consider it to be an emerging subject. It has already emerged as
True, sir.
an important subject in not only law but also in other related disciplines. But I think we can make the students aware of the potential opportunities in the field of intellectual property. They can join the corporate sector. Now today, in fact, there is an IP vigilance department in some of the corporate companies. Then IP valuation is one area. IP management is another area. One need not be a lawyer, for example, to manage licensing, assignment, and just think about it. If you are Amitabh Bachchan, when you are dealing with some kind of new project, negotiating about the remuneration and other things, it will be done mostly by his manager, not by Amitabh Bachchan. So such managers also need the intellectual property knowledge. So there are any number of opportunities, right from litigation to the adjudication, prosecution, then corporate sector, then cinema industry, or many other knowledge industries. We have to make these people aware of the opportunities, even including academics.
Ji, sir. Thank you for your wonderful response, sir. And we don't have any more questions, as I understand, because there is no more clarifications required, because your session was such elaborate and so clear. Everyone really enjoyed, and so many IP teachers have written that this session is very effective learning. So I thank you again on my behalf and on behalf of School of Law for taking out time and conduct this session with us for everyone's enlightenment. We have more than 214 participants here. Thank you for enlightening us. I am really grateful to you, sir. Thank you for sparing your time.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank
sir.
you all the participants.
Thank you, Dr. Lipika.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you everyone. Bye-bye.